Hey everybody, welcome back to You Are Free TV. It is Thursday, June 4th, 2026. I'm so glad to be back with you here on the channel on You Are Free TV. I want to say thank you so much to everybody supporting and especially supporting monthly. You make it happen. I'll jump in with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't make legal, financial, or any other advice. There are further disclaimers in the description below. Sorry, distracted there for a second on my intro, but it's only because I want to see where I'm going to start. And so I'll just put the glasses on here and get going. So glad to be back with you, and thank you so much for keeping me here. I think I'm going to start just by mentioning the massive shadow banning on You Are Free TV. It's so massive. The last video, just kind of not out there so much on the internet, massively shadow banned. Could you please subscribe? Could you please like the videos and share the videos? Hugely important for breaking the shadow ban. It's been at like 10.8 thousand subscribers for like 3 years now since I've been back up after the year segue there, and it's just ridiculous how shadow banned this channel is. And also if you are you have your settings to receive notifications, those aren't happening. Undo that and redo that, all very important. So that's just a little housekeeping to help break through some of what's going on here to shut down news that comes out here on You Are Free TV that doesn't get out by lots of channels. So, it's attacked. So any who's who what's, let's just jump in. Today is, of course, the 37th anniversary of Tiananmen Square massacre by the CCP. And of course, when we had all those brave older people who remembered life before the CCP, and then a massive student uprising against the CCP was going on. And of course, then you had Tank Man, who stood in the breach. You had Miles Gao, who was there as a student at the time, and the murder and the slaughter of all those people. And then, of course, you had the USA, largely instigated first by George H.W. Bush, and then the Clintons, et cetera, et al., Dianne Feinstein, her husband, and the venture capital funds, and everything to offshore and destroy the American manufacturing base, and to, of course, have China. We had been Taiwan before that with the cheap goods on a smaller level, but then it became, of course, China, okay, to have all the manufacturing, gut the United States. And of course, we're living through that now as the attempt to reshore is happening so intensely. And you had the new federal state of China movement come out of that, led by Miles Gao, who is suffering hugely under the CCP. And so we want to pay homage to all the brave souls that died 37 years ago today, and also think of Tim Walz having his wedding there in Tiananmen Square, his creepy Mao book collection, just the disgustingness of these people. So I wanted to honor that today. And so let's move on from there and jump in with the subject matter in the thumbnail, which of course Trump putting in William Pulte as the successor to Gabbard, as she's about to, release tons of stuff on her way out. And a lot of this is centered around the election justice, okay, and election security. And Bill Pulte, why everyone's so terrified of him, of course, is because of his access to everything to do with all of the real estate finances, okay, that have gone on. So much of it involved in a massive Rico case that isn't really being talked about. And Trump today, when he was doing his announcement from the White House on all of this investment into coal, and I'll get into that, but basically reopening coal plants across the United States, hugely Wyoming, West Virginia coming in there, also a new terminal to export coal from the United States, getting this through into Oakland, California, getting through those waterways. and the exit point there. All of this coming out, huge, huge, huge reinvestment into American energy infrastructure, so important. And of course, with Wyoming too being the rare earth minerals at the Peabody area there, all of this huge re-upping of America energy. And as Trump said, energy is supposed to be the most important money maker, economy maker. It's not supposed to lose things and be subsidized like wind and solar. And hence that important thing. But what Trump also had to say was that when he was asked about Pulte being in, of course, we have the big threat, okay, by the rhinos and Dems, the Uniparty demonic force of the deep state, threatening that if they don't pull Pulte, if he doesn't pull Pulte, they're going to cancel. They won't pass the renewal of the FISA 702, right? The FISA 702 that allows intelligence to spy on Americans and was used in the weaponization against Trump and the impeachments, all of it, the creation of the entire destruction of his first term attempts, and etc. Well, and so many, like something like 8 million Americans underneath this Section 702. And so they're saying, well, we won't renew it, which it's about to expire in a week. And so if you keep Pulte in, even as interim, and Trump today said he's only temporary, it's only interim because he knows Pulte will be there through the midterms and in this Rico case I'm about to talk about. And Trump said, it's only temporary. We're interviewing other people for the permanent job of DNI director to lead all the intelligence agencies. But Pulte's going in for now. And Trump said he has a lot of information to do with election rigging that's coming out. And so I wanted to cover what that is. And with the 702 cancellation and the threat there against FISA, that's a win-win. Okay, we get Bill Pulte, and we get, of course, the incredible situation of FISA being canceled, 702. So that's a fantastic win-win, and we should totally be thrilled for that to all go down. And of course, John Bolton pleading guilty today to one count of his 18-count indictment. We'll get into that as well in this video. But with Pulte, as he was, head of the finance, the housing and finance directorship there in the federal government, and of course went against all the mortgage fraud of the corrupt deep state establishment. Well, he also, of course, stopped the selling of Fannie and Freddie for 10% on the dollar for what it was worth, and instead increased it by over $1 trillion, and basically saved Fannie and Freddie from becoming privately run by basically BlackRock. So, but what we have here is so important when it comes to this Rico case that's not really being talked about, and I wanted to cover here today, and I'll link it below so you can check it out. This has to do with the election integrity, but also the stolen election of 2020 and the prosecutions coming down involving James Comey, involving the grand conspiracy cases going down, with Joe DeGeneva working so hard there. And this gets into Fort Pierce, Florida, Judge Cannon, but also another judge, John Bates, okay, becoming, we'll be hearing his name much more in the future, I believe, because while this is all being built out in this grand conspiracy case, there's further things in this election steal that get into James Comey, which is why they need to trap him in the 8647 charges to get him in the system fighting legally because of what's coming. And so let's look at this. And this comes out of nakedtruth.news, and I'll link it below. But this is about the first foreign election interference espionage case in American history that went public on the 12th of May. Okay, so less than a month ago, a few weeks ago, we have Judge John Bates out of Fort Pierce, Florida, with this Rico case to do with $11.3 billion that they're seizing. Okay, so this gets into Treasury, and it all comes back to Bessent, who was a boss in a congressional hearing today, who just shot down everybody trying to attack him. Very, very good. I'll get into that if I have time. But basically, Bessent, who of course knows how these NGOs work and having his experience with Soros Foundation for so long, he knows where the bodies are buried, how to go after the money, and he is. And we thank God for his coming into this role that he is now playing, and trust that his role is solid, because what we're having here in this Rico case out of Fort Pierce, Florida, with Judge John Bates, in this seizing of $11.3 billion, all having to do with election stealing. And Trump, again, in this coal energy announcement at the White House today, also mentioned Pulte. I don't want to say too much about what this has to do with him knowing about the election rigging, but he gets into the machines and things, and yeah, it sure does. Okay, and this is a Rico case for the first time in history, a foreign election interference espionage case. And so let's look at it. This is about final forfeiture order by Judge John Bates for $11.3 billion, assets being put into the U.S., seized by the U.S. Treasury, and a global criminal enterprise that began to the date they have as October 12th, 2016. And they arrested 11 people, small numbers, but we can count, like John Bolton, okay, to avoid prison that he's trying so hard. He has about 3 weeks until from now till his sentencing to flip up big, but the plea deals are in, and it's already in process. But basically, 11 people arrested on March 20th, 12 DC law firms involved, 12 contractors, and then there's the nonprofits and NGOs, including the Soros Open Societies Foundation. And in all of this mix is Hsbc, and Hsbc hugely to do with this, with $4.2 billion in this mix of this money involved in laundering information about our elections to how the machines would be rigged in the 2020 election. And this $4.2 billion. So you just remember, James Comey was a top executive at Hsbc before he became FBI director, which is why they brought him in this situation. It wasn't only for, even though it's called in here that his involvement, this is involved in the case. This is the behind the scenes thing coming out for James Comey, is that Hsbc and this 4.2 billion that ties Comey to British intelligence, the Russian dossier, and Smartmatic voting systems, which is headquartered in London. And they run the DOM-ION software, okay? And so this all gets into where Comey's cases in grand conspiracy are headed, but it is way bigger than Comey, okay? This is about, and we're seeing the Brennan things ramping up as well. And so, but what we look at here is all parties involved in stealing voter data from the FBI. Okay, so this laundering of data from the FBI, voter data, okay, to which Comey was the director of, all right, and selling it to foreign governments for a total of $11.3 billion. And this gets into that, all this money, and why I'm mentioning Pulte being such an expert, why Trump is bringing him at this juncture and before the midterms. And so much will be released that will help to prevent what could be. We're watching it in California now with the second day of counting ballots, and Trump said again in his White House presser today, we need to look at California. We might, and we have Comer and others coming out of the judiciary saying we might have to put a master in there to come in to control what's going on in California as they continue to count the votes right in California. And also this case in Mississippi, according to John Solomon, where the Supreme Court case in Mississippi that is going to rule on all votes must be counted on election night in per the Constitution, for what is written into the Constitution, that all states must have a Republican form of government per the Constitution, and that this is based in there. So Trump coming out and speaking about what he sees happening as a California primary steal, as evidenced by Karen Bass, right? Ridiculous, and so much more besides. But moving on from there and continuing on with this Rico case, this is a Rico case, and they don't have statute of limitations on Rico, which is why the grand conspiracy and now this $11.3 billion seized. And just to remind you about HSBC, their subsidiary banks in Mexico, last year we had Secretary Bessent already seizing tons and tons of funds and shutting down operations in Mexico, okay, where you had all this cartel money that was also interconnected with election stuff, but it had largely to do with cartels, all of this interconnection. Of course, the City of London running the cartel Babylon economy of sin with the cartel money, okay, that runs through the weapons and the trafficking all throughout the world, but of course, largely the destruction of the U.S. being the huge hub. And so when we look at this, and this stealing of all this data from the FBI is the angle they're taking, massive voter data sold to governments, a total of 11.3 billion. And what I was just about to say was we have the situation where a lot of this went through real estate fraud. So think Vatican Bank real estate fraud. Think of the cartels all throughout southwestern United States, real estate fraud. The real estate fraud coming out about our feckless, disgusting, treasonous traitor Congress people coming out through Pulte in the indictments, and more, right? That's, the small fish just emulating the big fish. But the real estate fraud for money laundering is just massive across the board, even with the IRGC and the supposedly still alive Ayatollah son was huge. His money running through these real estate laundering apparatus in City of London. Remember Archbishop Vigano with the Vatican Bank money and the takedown of Ratzinger. All of this to do, again, with the exposure of the real estate fraud through the City of London, to do with laundering money for economy of sin purposes and participation. And so when we look at this, we have this 11.3 billion, okay, selling worth of sold info through real estate holdings to foreign governments. And these governments included the CCP, okay, out of China. And this has to do with Connect, the Connect poll chief software, okay. And Connect, of course, owns DOMINION, which was sold by, out of State Street, I believe, but it was Janet Biden, Joe Biden's sister's husband, right, that did that deal selling DOMINION to, it all happened kind of fast. It hopped from one ownership to the next, and then the CCP bought them. And then we saw the massive lawsuits and lawfare, all seeming so Western, but no. So we had this with the CCP is the foreign government mentioned with Connect and DOMINION. And then we have the British Crown, okay, is the second foreign government involved here. And then we're talking about Smartmatic. And of course, they provide all the software to DOMINION. And they, headquarters of Smartmatic in the City of London. And then Russia being the third, okay, to do with their Parascript software, which reads fake machine signed mail-in votes as genuine. So all those not blank, but those unfolded, no envelopes, ballots in the middle of the night thing. They were saying that what's in this indictment is this. This comes out of Russian software called Parascript. And so think of, Serbia and the machines there, who's controlling them now, all the information that came through Venezuela, through the capture of Maduro, but before that with his bag man who gave all that information to Patrick Byrne, who passed it on to do with all of this, to do with how they keep all these mail-in, happening now in California, ballots, votes as genuine. And what Peter Tickton has said is, in the archives of the entire voter rolls of forever, unlike, with Tina Peters now free, thank God, when they do overrides of the system, like they were doing in her case in Mesa County, Colorado. Well, what we have is that, unlike that, where they come and erase the actual election results, the voter rolls are kept in these electronic archives where they can just bring them live, says Peter Tickton, who I wish was going to be the Attorney General. Now Trump has come out and said that Blanche is going to be the permanent Attorney General, already facing huge fights, supposedly, in the Senate, whatever. But anyway, Tickton said that no, they can dip into these archives and just activate a past or dead or created or whatever. If they're in there, they can activate them to vote and then deactivate them immediately, all part of this. And so this is all very, very interesting. And when you look at the holding companies involved, we're looking at Blue Ridge Holding and Trust. This comes out of Miami, is their hub, and West Palm Beach hub for financial laundering. And that is totals between all of the aforementioned players, $7.1 billion, right? That's Blue Ridge Holding and Trust. And then so that's all in the South District of Florida, right? And then in McLean, CIA, Virginia, literally McLean, we get a McLean, Virginia real estate portfolio, literally. And they're coming out of the Cayman Islands, plus digital caches, huge, a panorama of shell companies for their total of 4.1 billion. So this is massive, okay? And this is what's going down. And we know that Pulte is said to be bringing in a hardcore MAGA team, people that are not worried about their future jobs, full bore, get justice for the stealing of the 2020 election, and to bring election integrity to the future, to put these people in jail, to have the arrests, to shut it down, and to bring justice to all of us who have fought so hard for it. And so this is a huge win. It is absolutely amazing. And so we're going to watch it play out. And that's why you have your demon rat, Rhino party criminals fighting so hard against Pulte, because in all the work he did with the finance and housing directorship, he uncovered so much, okay, and so much fraud, to do with money laundering. And so they're terrified of this exact thing, because they know the higher ups in that deep state apparatus, the council members, etc., out of the Pilgrim Society at all, out of their headquarters in London, they know how it went down, and so they know what he's capable of doing and is doing, and this unspoken situation of this Rico case in Florida. And so, John Solomon's been hinting about it, but not talking about it openly, saying we're going to see big stuff. Well, this is the big stuff that's going down. So I really wanted to get that out there and let you know about it. So fantastic, huge, huge things to be excited about coming forward. And I did also want to mention this. We do have the next dire, awful, demonic push by the deep state from legislators in California and Massachusetts, always trustworthy, putting out the Great American AI Act today, right? And this is the third try to push another bogus beard to try to convince the Americans to accept that states won't be able to alter the build out of AI. And we also have this very interesting article coming out of Wired. I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow because I have limited time this evening, but where they're trying to frame a new domestic teist personality group that is the anti-technology AI dome tease, right? And so it's very interesting to look at this when we remember people like Hugo de Garis in his book, The Coming Art Elect War, who had started early AI way back in the 90s and went to the CCP and was working there because they gave him the money. And then they told him, hey, we're going to own it all. You can't control it. And it's going to be our communist thing. And he left and said, no, I'm not going to do it then. And his whole prediction in his book, The Coming Art Elect War, was it's the Terrans versus the augmented, the people who accept the mark, but not only accept it, but get their superpowers by being augmented by the silicon demon, and that's what's coming. And so we're seeing in our deep state intelligence this build out around domestic teaism to do with the people going against the machine, going against the AI data centers. And we already know that NVIDIA and so many other of these top companies that are trying to claim themselves as trillionaire, $1 trillion worth, 2 trillion, et cetera, and then, Musk, 10 trillion, that they are building in the Arctic already. They're already building where they know it's super cold. And that's what AI data centers need, and you need so much less energy to do that. And that's, is part and parcel of Trump's Greenland situation as well. And of course, not to mention the Golden Dome situation, but this, the icebreakers, the build out in the Arctic, so much of this connected with the cold temperatures for the build out of AI data centers. And so why would they want to build them in the deserts where it's roasting hot and need tons and tons and tons and tons of energy to cool this down? And that's a whole nother thing for a whole nother day. But it is, we all know the reason. It's because, of course, they want the surveillance prison planet rollout, that it's like an electronic fence. There's electronic fences for dogs, right? Where they can't go past a certain point before they feel harm. Well, that's, of course, what their intention for us. And, of course, with the merger of the Israel Section 224 of the NDAA is quite like that, to put them in charge of our freedoms here. And that is, why they have to have the local AI data centers creating these massive localized control systems. And there's a little also, and of course, I'm going to get into this tomorrow as well, along with that Wired article about the creation of this new group of domestic teists that are the anti-tech, anti-AA data center people, right? And saying it's all Neville Singham, which it is, because the CCP does want to stop, who, he is funding it, some protests in Utah and other places against AI data centers. But that's for the CCP. Okay, that the CCP wants to stop the rollout of progression of AI progress and dominance in the United States. So it's a both and. It's always this counterpoint. It's always a dialectic. When the real people, just your average American who does not want to have the beast literally destroying their consciousness right down the road, and their environment, everything destroyed. There's also the issue of the water and how consciousness moves through water, and the capture of consciousness being the main directive, the last frontier, the control for the mind, the war for the mind being the biggest deal, and why the propaganda, why the lie, why deceit is Satan's number one tool, but weaponize that into electronics and silicon and the capture of your mind, and then use God's creation against us, which is the water, which, as we've seen for so long with people like what is it? The Message of Water, that book, Michio Kutu, or I don't have his name in my mind, but we see how water carries consciousness, and as they run our water through AI, claiming it's just a wraparound cycle, that's not true for most data centers. It is the feeding of the demon beast of the AI information, that fragmented absolute Frankenstein of information loaded with their toxic, um, uh, soul-crushing information back into the water. Okay, back into the water, recycling back into us, and that's a huge part of all of it. And we'll be talking more about that probably tomorrow. We will be talking more about that, and also the new creation of the anti-tech teists that they're rolling out here, largely in at the same time as the section 224 of the NDAA, fusing Israel in real time access to all data, fusion of data, and satellite information, development of all of our most cutting edge new technology, and how horrifying that is. And I might leave it there. I was going to, I needed to keep this, kind of short today. I'm going to get into what's going on over in the Balkans tomorrow. We have Zelensky, of course, now saying that he wants to meet with Putin, right, as the Suwalki Gap FE is coming out. And I put it out in my last video with this claim that Putin's going to move in to Belarus, use Belarus as forward staging grounds to attack NATO countries in the EU. Total baloney. And now Zelensky saying he wants to meet directly with Putin. And Ukraine's already gone. It's already captured state. It's gone. Okay, its generations are gone. It has had its children trafficked. It is owned now part and parcel to become something new, a totally captured cartel Babylon breadbasket of possibility that they want to do with it. And it's not to make all that great food that Ukraine has always done, but it's instead to carry out their demonic plans for a new military state, total electronic dungeon area for their new world order build out, for their massive war that Ursula von der Leyen has come out recently and let slip that they plan to keep this war going at least 10 years. And so, with Zelensky saying he wants to meet with Putin without Trump because Trump's too busy there in Iran, this is all very interesting as we're seeing this very interesting situation around Albania. And I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow to do with Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump trying to buy this island in Albania, all the connections there with Alex Soros and Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania, and this new Ukraine possibility that is going to be Albania. Well, they kind of get us looking over here. They're orchestrating another situation over there. And so we'll be talking about that tomorrow. We're seeing thousands of people protesting in Japan to do with the building of the first mosque. They've had ancient temples burned to the ground, massive amounts of destruction by allowing Islamists into their country, protesting that hugely, and it keeps going on and on. So, and let's just mention this towards the end. I have a lot to talk about tomorrow. I had to keep this one short for today, but Amazon now reaches the top of Fortune 500's top revenue corporation. Okay, so every heart and mind that gives consent, that has, to the purchasing of cheap crap delivered free while they destroy our postal system, raise all of our rates to support Amazon. And that used to be the most trustworthy, kind of institution we had since the Pony Express. Plus, of course, putting mom and pop out of business, putting all our bookstores out of business, and destroying natural food stores and the buyout of Whole Foods to make it now. You might as well just shop at Walmart. That just lost its 13-year reign as the top Fortune 500 revenue source. So sorry, Hillary Clinton, that you're losing some money there at Walmart. And yeah, so, it's so important that we change buying habits and that you re-support your local people, your farmers markets, especially here now. It's time that you don't have to go buy from Whole Foods, and you really, really need to look at your Amazon sponsorship, if that's because that's what you're doing. You're supporting the most destructive corporation in our manufacturing world by supporting Amazon. So I pray that if you don't want the U.S.-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative to be the thing that is, coming to control you in the future, it starts at home, and it starts with local. And tomorrow I'm also going to be talking more about Stephen Kuhn and his join tab.us, join tab.us, that's takeamericaback.us, county by county, how you can get involved to occupy the more than 300,000 unoccupied official political seats in this country, local, small town, that if we want to do it, just like we have to avoid Amazon, we have to go local to take over our governments, which mostly are sitting with huge amounts of numbers of official positions unoccupied, or else 70% of all local government races are unopposed. And so this is how we change things. Check out jointab.usa and find out more. They will train you and show you exactly how you find out what's going on in your own county. So very, very important stuff there, and we will get more into it tomorrow as well. So a bit of a shorty today, just based on what I'm able to do this evening, but huge, huge stuff going on here in the election justice realm, in the election security realm, in the using the power of the Treasury to go after the money. It's all about the money, right? And so that's why Scott Bessent has been doing this systematically and piece by piece, and now going to be working with Warsh at the Federal Reserve to continue along this vein, okay, to bring the credit back to Main Street, okay, to de-emphasize any credit going to the Wall Street corporations and bring the credit back to the small businesses of Main Street. And we're going to be watching that roll out in these coming months. So prayers and huge, huge, huge armor of God, right? Let's all get active and involved. This is the time. There's a lot of great going on, and we're seeing wins in the hearts and minds and in the polls and across all of it. You have Mark, what's his name, Mark, oh, and I will talk about John Bolton real quick before we go, but Mark Lynch is actually closing the gap on Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. So this is huge for that Senate. That primary is Tuesday, this Tuesday, the 9th. So you have to get out, volunteer now if you can, get out your lawn signs, get out and get people. When you go to the primary, bring 5 friends. You need to vote in this primary in South Carolina. And get Lindsey Graham primaried by Mark Lynch. He's a deacon, great businessman, and literally wants Lindsey Graham in jail for being a treasonous criminal. And so let's focus on that. I'll link that below. And yeah, he points out that in Lindsey Graham's entire career, he has a wretched 57% only constitutional vote record, where he's gone to side with the Constitution. They call him Grahamnesty for his desire to grant amnesty, blanket amnesty, and he voted for the 180,000 unvetted Afghans into the USA to come in with Biden's horrific and horrible giving of $85 billion worth of U.S. Weapons and infrastructure to Afghanistan, and the killing of all of those people, right? And so, yeah, we're up against it, but we're doing great. So let's keep doing great. That's what God expects no less of you. So I know that you're capable of it. And so the last thing on Bolton, I'll just tell you, there'll be more on this tomorrow as well, but with his guilty plea here, we're going to be seeing backflips because he does not want to go to prison for 5 years. It's a 5-year, 60-month sentence for his one guilty plea, okay, out of 18 counts for this is trading in national secrets. This is basically stealing them, and stealing national secrets on over 1,000 emails in this diary he created for himself that he sent these emails to his family members. And we have to wonder who's going to be flipped up here, because we know there was a very close-in situation here with AG Barr, with Bill Barr, Epstein's last seen person at the jail, where Bill Barr is closely aligned in this whole case. And so his sentencing is coming up in 3 weeks on the 26th. And we can expect a big flip, okay? Because between now and the sentencing, a lot of deals going to have to be done, right? So for John Bolton, with this possible 5-year sentence, imagine if it had been all 18. That's 5 years times 18, so 100 years, give or take, underneath there. And so, yeah, I think that we're going to be seeing Bolton do some backflips here. And there'll be more to talk about it as we go forward. So thanks so much for watching. If you found something helpful or new information in this video and you want to support the channel, so appreciated. There's ways to do so below. Super appreciated. Shoestring, Super Shadow Band. Please, please, please like, subscribe, share. Very important, especially the subscribe part. And especially to get notifications. They're not happening for so many people. Come up and they're like, oh, it's so good to see you back up. They're shadow banning on Rumble and everywhere else, and limiting comments. So keep trying on those comments, because a lot of people are having trouble getting them up. And I will say thank you to c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use the code YAFTV for 10% off. This is the incredible and amazing miracle molecule that is ESS60, the purest, most incredible, I'll just throw the ticker on there, most incredible carbon-60 created in the best lab out of Houston, Texas, by the people who create the purest, most pure carbon-60, ESS60. It's so pure. Basically can claim 100% purity with all solvents removed, made in this reactor that emulates the action of the sun. It's super pure. This is, of course, gets into your mitochondria, takes the garbage out of your mitochondria, works with your master hormones, with your glutathione, your melatonin, and it's bought up by the caseload, by the big C, alternative clinics, people dealing with central nervous system disorders, but people use it just for greater focus, a better mood, huge anti-inflammatory results. And I can say this, they can't, because of the FDA still up the wazoo of all of us, as we would like to hear less about push notifications from RFK Jr. and more about C60 Evo. Although we did also get, oh, and I'll just say this before I finish up, and 15% off to anybody who donates to the channel. Plus, I give away 2 bottles of capsules every month. I love the capsules for carrying around in your pocket to use throughout the day if you need a boost of energy or clarity. And also, a lot of people report taking in the morning, feel better, better mood, better energy, better focus during the day, and sleep better at night. But I give away 2 bottles of the capsules randomly every month to donators. My sponsor allows me to do that to people who support the channel, randomly selected. So keep that in mind as well. And so, but yeah, it's Trump also did an executive order yesterday or today, where basically he is backing up the massive, and this is big ups to RFK Jr., backing up the consolidating down, limiting down the vaccine schedule for children down to, it basically amounts to about 9 mandatory vaccines. There should be none. We're seeing that there's a huge decline in longevity in this country, in the age expectancy, life expectancy, down by, I think, something like 10 years, okay, first time in history. since the vaccine generation came, about 1970 onward, complete ongoing decline of life expectancy. And so there should be no vaccines, and especially those ones, those 9 deadly ones, having mRNA or thimerosal, toxic mercury, or all the heavy metals, or all the cancer viruses. I say no, none. But this is a huge compared to the like 90 vaccines that children have been getting, like insane that we're even still functioning as a society with that. So anyway, thanks for listening to me rant. Thanks for supporting the channel. Pray, pray, pray. Take up your role, get active, and you are free. I'll see you tomorrow.